Maya Rodriguez had 3 rules for surviving as a xenobiologist on the Outer Rim Research Station Kepler 442b. Rule 1. Never touch anything that glows. Rule 2. Never trust anything with more than 4 eyes. Rule 3. Absolutely never, under any circumstances, develop emotional attachments to the local wildlife. She was about to break Rule 3 in spectacular fashion. Another thrilling day in paradise, Maya muttered, trudging through the purple swamp muck that passed for soil on this godforsaken rock. Her boots made disgusting squelching sounds with every step, and the toxic fumes rising from the bog made her environmental suit's filters work overtime. Remind me again why I didn't become an accountant like Mom wanted. The sample collection was routine, boring even. Scoop some primordial ooze into a containment unit, label it with increasingly creative curse words, and pretend she was contributing to humanity's understanding of the universe, instead of just cataloging different types of alien slime. That's when she heard it. A high-pitched keening sound, barely audible over the bubble and hiss of the swamp gases. Maya froze, her scanner halfway to another puddle of suspicious green goo. Please be a malfunctioning comm unit, she whispered to herself. Please don't be something alive and pathetic. But the universe, as always, had a twisted sense of humor. There, struggling in what looked like a pool of liquid mercury mixed with battery acid, was the most ridiculous creature Maya had ever seen. It was about the size of a house cat, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep purple to brilliant gold. 2 tiny wings flapped frantically, doing absolutely nothing to keep it afloat. Its eyes were enormous, dark, and filled with what could only be described as baby panic. Oh come on, Maya groaned. Really? A baby dragon? On the one day I forgot to pack my night armor? The creature let out another pitiful squeak, and sank deeper into the toxic pool. Its little claws scraped uselessly against the slippery edge, and Maya could see it was losing strength fast. This is exactly how horror movies start, she informed the universe at large. Helpful human saves adorable alien creature. Creature grows up to devour entire space station. I've seen this documentary. But even as she complained, Maya was already moving toward the pool, her emergency rescue kit in hand. Because apparently 3 decades of life experience had taught her nothing about self-preservation. All right, tiny dragon thing, today's your lucky day. Though to be fair, your luck is pretty questionable if I'm your best rescue option. She extended the telescoping rescue pole toward the struggling creature. It immediately latched on with all 4 paws, clinging to the end like its life depended on it. Which, Maya supposed, it probably did. There we go, easy does it. She carefully lifted the creature out of the toxic soup, trying not to notice how it was shivering. Welcome to the wonderful world of not drowning in alien battery acid. The tour sucks, but the not dying part is generally well reviewed. The moment the creature was safely on solid ground, it looked up at Maya with those impossibly large eyes, and made a soft trilling sound that went straight to her heart like a heat-seeking missile. Oh no, Maya said, recognizing the feeling with growing horror. Oh no, no no, don't you dare look at me like that. I am not your mother, I don't even like regular Earth pets. But the creature had already started following her, making little chirping sounds that sounded suspiciously like gratitude. Maya sighed and activated her comm unit. Rodriguez to base. I'm going to need a xenobiology containment unit prepared, and maybe some therapy. I think I just adopted an alien. She looked down at the creature, who had now wrapped its tiny wings around her boot. Great, just great. What am I supposed to call you? Fluffy? Sparky? She paused, watching the way the creature's scales caught the alien sunlight. You know what? You look like a chicken nugget with delusions of grandeur. Nugget it is. Nugget chirped happily, as if approving of his new name. Don't get comfortable, Maya warned him. This is strictly temporary. Once I figure out what species you are, you're going back to whatever family is probably wondering where their wayward baby dragon wandered off to. But even as she said it, Maya was already calculating what kind of habitat she'd need to set up in her lab. Just temporarily, of course. Just until she could find Nugget's real home. Rule 3, she reflected sadly, had always been her weakest rule anyway. Back at the research station, Maya discovered that caring for an alien baby dragon was roughly equivalent to babysitting a hyperactive toddler with wings, and a complete disregard for the laws of physics. Nugget. No. Maya lunged across her lab as the creature attempted to eat her most expensive spectrometer. That's not food. That's a precision instrument worth more than my annual salary. Nugget paused, tilted his head at her with those enormous eyes, and promptly tried to eat the spectrometer again. I see we're going with the malicious compliance approach to pet ownership. Maya muttered, carefully extracting the device from tiny dragon teeth. Fantastic. Really building that trust between species here. She'd been trying to identify nugget species for the past 6 hours, but the research station's xenobiology database was about as helpful as a chocolate teapot. Every search came back with species unknown or insufficient data, which was science speak for congratulations, you found something that's going to give you a headache. Meanwhile, Nugget had apparently decided that Maya's lab was his personal playground. He'd already knocked over 3 sample containers, somehow managed to get stuck inside a specimen jar, and was now attempting to build a nest out of her research notes. Those are my observations on crystalline fungal structures, Maya said, watching him shred a week's worth of work. But sure, I'm confident your artistic vision will improve on them. The lab door hissed open, and Captain Brooks strode in with the kind of purposeful stride that usually meant Maya was about to have a very bad day. Rodriguez, what is that thing? Brooks demanded, pointing at Nugget, who was now hanging upside down from a ceiling fixture like a scaly bat. That, Maya said with the weary patience of someone who'd been asked this question 12 times already, is a temporarily displaced indigenous life form that I'm attempting to classify and return to its natural habitat. It's a contamination risk, Brooks snapped. Station protocol clearly states that unidentified alien life forms are to be contained and disposed of immediately. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. Disposed of. Incinerated. Standard procedure. Brooks pulled out his tablet, already scrolling through the relevant regulations. I want that thing gone within the hour. Absolutely not. The words came out before Maya could stop them. This is a sentient being, not lab waste. It's an unknown pathogen vector. Brooks countered. For all we know, it could be carrying diseases that could wipe out the entire station. Maya glanced at Nugget, who had given up on the ceiling fixture and was now trying to figure out how to open a sealed sample container. His tiny forked tongue flicked out as he concentrated, and Maya felt her heart do something inconvenient. Look at him, she said. Does he look like a bioweapon to you? He's just a baby. A baby what, Rodriguez? You can't even identify the species. I need more time. You have 1 hour. Brooks turned to leave, then paused. And Rodriguez, if that thing causes any damage to station equipment, it's coming out of your pay. The door hissed shut behind him, and Maya slumped against her workbench. Well, Nugget, it looks like we've got a problem. She looked at the creature, who had somehow managed to get his head stuck in a beaker. And you're not helping your case by being the most destructive thing to hit this station since the great coffee maker explosion of 2387. Nugget made a muffled chirping sound that might have been apologetic. Maya sighed and gently extracted him from the beaker. All right, let's make a deal. You stop trying to eat my equipment, and I'll figure out how to keep Captain Stick-Up-His-Ass from turning you into alien barbecue. Sound fair? Nugget trilled softly and nuzzled against her hand. I'm taking that as a yes, Maya said, then activated her computer terminal. Computer, expand search parameters for unidentified reptilian species. Include all archived first contact reports and classified xenobiology files. Access denied, the computer replied in its maddeningly cheerful voice. Insufficient clearance level. Of course, Maya muttered. Because why would they let the actual xenobiologist access the xenobiology files? She looked down at Nugget, who was now curled up in her lap like a scaly kitten. Don't worry, little guy. I've got 57 minutes to either identify your species or figure out how to hide you from the universe's most humorless space captain. How hard could it be? Nugget chirped once, as if answering her question. Yeah, Maya said, scratching behind his tiny horns. That's what I was afraid of. Maya had exactly 17 minutes left to save Nugget's life when every alarm on the research station started screaming at once. All personnel to emergency stations, the computer announced with the kind of calm that made Maya's blood pressure spike. Unidentified vessels approaching. Repeat, unidentified vessels approaching. Oh, fantastic, Maya muttered, scooping Nugget off her workbench where he'd been trying to reorganize her periodic table by taste. Because this day wasn't complicated enough already. The lab's emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in hellish red. Through the observation window, Maya could see the night sky lighting up with massive shapes descending through the atmosphere. Ships, but not like anything in the human fleet database. These were organic-looking, all-flowing curves and crystalline protrusions that caught the starlight like jeweled scales. Computer, identify incoming vessels, Maya called out, but she already had a sinking feeling she knew the answer. Species unknown, configuration unknown, intent unknown. The computer paused, then added with what Maya swore was smugness, insufficient data for analysis. Story of my life, Maya groaned. Nugget, apparently unbothered by the impending alien invasion, was chirping excitedly and flapping his tiny wings. For the first time since Maya had found him, he seemed genuinely happy instead of just curious about everything within eating distance. "Don't tell me you recognize these ships," Maya said, looking down at him. "Please don't tell me I accidentally kidnapped alien royalty or something equally ridiculous." Nugget's enthusiastic trilling was not reassuring. The comm system crackled to life with Captain Brooks's voice, pitched about 3 octaves higher than usual. "All science personnel to the main conference room immediately. We have a first contact situation." Maya grabbed her tablet and headed for the door, Nugget perched on her shoulder like the world's most exotic parrot. In the corridor she nearly collided with Dr. Kim, from the physics department, who was running toward the observation deck with what appeared to be a homemade welcome banner. "Maya," Kim called out, "did you see the ships? They're beautiful. I think they're trying to communicate through some kind of harmonic resonance pattern." "Great," Maya said, because nothing says peaceful intentions like mysterious alien harmonics. The conference room was chaos. Half the station's crew was gathered around the main view screen, watching as 3 massive ships settled into orbit around Kepler 442b. They were even more impressive up close, each one easily the size of a small moon and covered in what looked like living scales that shifted color in waves. Captain Brooks stood at the head of the table, looking like a man who just realized his insurance policy didn't cover alien invasions. "Rodriguez, good, we need your expertise. The aliens are transmitting on multiple frequencies, but our universal translator is having trouble with the language structure." Maya slid into a seat, trying to keep Nugget hidden under her jacket. "What kind of trouble?" "It keeps translating everything as either death or honor with no middle ground," Brooks said grimly. "Either they're here to destroy us or they want to give us medals. The linguistic analysis department is having a nervous breakdown." Lieutenant Torres, the station's communications officer, looked up from her console with barely controlled panic. "Captain, they're requesting permission to board, I think. The translator is now alternating between request boarding and demand tribute of flesh." "Lovely," Maya muttered. "Have we tried turning the translator off and on again?" Before Brooks could answer, the main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the most magnificent creature Maya had ever seen. It was clearly the same species as Nugget, but adult-sized and radiating an authority that made everyone in the room instinctively straighten up. Golden scales caught the light like armor, and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages fixed directly on the camera. When the creature spoke, its voice came through the translator as a rich, melodious tone that somehow managed to sound both regal and irritated. "Greetings, small warm bloods. I am Zarith, matriarch of the 19th Drakari hunting pack. We come seeking what was taken from the sacred testing grounds." Brooks stepped forward, putting on his best diplomatic smile. "Welcome, Matriarch Zarith. I'm Captain Brooks of the Human Research Station Kepler 442b. We're honored by your visit, though I'm afraid we don't understand your reference to something being taken." Zarith's eyes narrowed, and Maya felt Nugget tense against her shoulder. "One of our young was removed from the trial waters," Zarith continued, her voice dropping to something that made the room's temperature feel like it had dropped 10 degrees. "This is a grave violation of our most sacred laws. The youngling must be returned immediately, along with the one who dared interfere with our ancient customs." Maya's stomach dropped somewhere around her boots. She glanced around the room, hoping against hope that someone else had secretly rescued a baby alien dragon in the last 24 hours. No such luck. Brooks was looking confused. "I'm sorry, but there must be some mistake. We haven't taken any of your people. This is just a research station. The youngling's life song calls to us from within your dwelling," Zarith said, and her massive head tilted slightly. "We can hear him even now." As if on cue, Nugget poked his head out from Maya's jacket and let out a cheerful chirp that echoed through the conference room speakers. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that usually preceded very bad things happening to very unprepared humans. "Rodriguez," Captain Brooks said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, "please tell me that's not what I think it is." Maya looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues, all of whom were staring at her with expressions ranging from horror to fascination to what looked like the beginnings of hysteria. "Well," she said finally, "remember how you wanted me to dispose of an unidentified alien life form within the hour? Turns out that might have been a really bad idea. On the screen, Matriarch Zarith's eyes were fixed directly on Maya with an intensity that made her feel like a mouse being studied by a particularly intelligent hawk. "Bring me the one who interfered with our sacred trial," Zarith commanded. Immediately. The walk to the station's main docking bay felt like a death march, complete with Captain Brooks muttering prayers to whatever deity protected incompetent space station commanders, and Maya trying to figure out if there was any way to spin "I accidentally kidnapped alien royalty" into a positive career move. "Maybe we should have called Earth Command," Brooks whispered as they approached the airlock. "This is way above my pay grade." "What were you going to tell them?" Maya shot back. "That we need backup because our xenobiologist can't tell the difference between a stray animal and a sacred alien ritual. I'm sure they'd love that report." Nugget, still perched on Maya's shoulder, seemed completely oblivious to the diplomatic crisis he'd caused. He was making soft trilling sounds, and occasionally trying to groom Maya's hair with his tiny tongue, which would have been adorable if it weren't happening right before what might very well turn out to be humanity's first interstellar war. The docking bay doors hissed open, and Maya got her first up-close look at the Drakari delegation. If she thought Matriarch Zarith was impressive on screen, seeing her in person was like comparing a photograph of a hurricane to actually standing in one. Zarith stood nearly 8 feet tall, her golden scales shifting through shades of amber and bronze as she moved. 2 other Drakari flanked her, slightly smaller but no less imposing, their own scales showing patterns of deep emerald and midnight blue. All 3 had the same wing arm structure as Nugget, but scaled up to proportions that could probably bench press a shuttle. "Greetings, Matriarch Zarith," Captain Brooks said, stepping forward with what Maya had to admit was impressive composure for someone who looked like he was about to pass out. "I'm Captain Brooks, and this is Dr. Maya Rodriguez, our chief xenobiologist." Zarith's massive eyes fixed on Maya, and she felt like she was being examined by a particularly intelligent searchlight. "You are the one who interfered with the youngling's trial." "Interfered is a pretty strong word," Maya said, then immediately wondered why her mouth had decided to engage without consulting her brain first. "I prefer prevented tragic drowning accident." The universal translator made some interesting beeping sounds as it processed that statement, then apparently gave up and started repeating sarcasm detected in increasingly panicked tones. "Your translator appears to be malfunctioning," Zarith observed, tilting her great head. "Are you expressing hostility?" "No," Captain Brooks jumped in quickly. "Dr. Rodriguez is just she has a very particular way of expressing herself." She meant no disrespect. Maya opened her mouth to clarify, but Zarith raised one clawed hand for silence. When she spoke again, her voice carried undertones that made the metal walls of the docking bay vibrate slightly. "The youngling was placed in the trial waters as part of our most sacred coming-of-age ritual. By removing him, you have violated not only our customs but our laws. This is an act of aggression against the Drakari people." Act of aggression. Maya couldn't help herself. "I saved a baby from drowning in what looked like liquid death. Where I come from, that's called basic decency, not a war crime." The translator started making sounds like a dial-up modem having an existential crisis. "Maya," Brooks hissed under his breath, "please stop talking." But Zarith was staring at Maya with what might have been curiosity. "You believed the youngling was in danger?" "Of course I did. He was drowning in a pool of toxic waste. What kind of parent lets their kid play in battery acid?" One of Zarith's companions, the one with emerald scales, made a sound that the translator helpfully identified as either laughter or death rattle. Maya really hoped it was the former, battery acid. Zarith repeated slowly, "An interesting comparison. Your species lacks the knowledge of our ways, it seems." "Look," Maya said, pulling Nugget gently from her shoulder and holding him up. "I don't care about your ways." This little guy was scared, alone, and about to die. "I couldn't just walk away." Nugget chose that moment to let out a happy chirp and nuzzle against Maya's hand, which would have been touching if everyone in the docking bay hadn't suddenly gone very, very still. "The youngling has accepted your touch," Zarith said quietly. "This is unexpected." "Yeah, well, he's got questionable judgment," Maya replied. "Takes after his rescuer, apparently." Behind her, Maya could hear Captain Brooks making small whimpering sounds. Lieutenant Torres had gone pale enough to blend in with the bulkheads, and Dr. Kim was frantically scribbling notes like this was the most fascinating anthropological study she'd ever witnessed instead of a potential diplomatic disaster. "Matriarch," the blue-scaled Drakari spoke for the first time, his voice a low rumble that made Maya's teeth ache. "The small warm blood speaks of our customs with disrespect. Perhaps we should demonstrate the consequences of interfering with sacred trials." Maya felt her mouth go dry as the 3 Drakari seemed to loom larger, their scales shifting to darker, more ominous hues. "Now hold on." Captain Brooks stepped forward, finally finding his backbone. Dr. Rodriguez meant no harm. She was acting according to human moral principles. "Surely we can resolve this peacefully." "Peace," Zarith mused, "requires understanding. Your subordinate has disrupted a ritual that has been practiced for 10,000 of your years. The youngling's trial was meant to prove his worthiness to join our pack. By interfering, she has stolen his opportunity to earn his place among us." Maya looked down at Nugget, who was blissfully unaware that he'd apparently failed some kind of cosmic exam because she'd had a moment of compassion. "So what happens now?" she asked, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "Do you take him back and throw him in another toxic pool? Do you punish me for having a conscience? Or do we all stand here, making threatening gestures until someone gets bored?" The silence stretched so long that Maya could hear her own heartbeat. Then, impossibly, Matriarch Zarith did something that the universal translator couldn't quite process but sounded suspiciously like laughter. "You have courage, small warm blood," Zarith said finally. "Foolish courage, perhaps, but courage nonetheless. This presents us with an interesting dilemma." Maya wasn't sure if that was good news or the kind of interesting dilemma that ended with her being fed to space dragons, but at least they were still talking instead of shooting. "What kind of dilemma?" she asked, though she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to know the answer. Matriarch Zarith began pacing around the docking bay with the kind of fluid grace that made Maya think of apex predators contemplating their next meal. Her scales shifted through different shades of gold and bronze, creating patterns that Maya's brain kept trying to interpret as either beautiful or terrifying. "The dilemma," Zarith said finally, "is that your actions have created a situation unprecedented in Drakari history." "Great," Maya muttered. "I love being a pioneer. Really adds that special something to my resume." Captain Brooks shot her a look that could have powered the station's reactor for a week, but Maya was beyond caring about diplomatic niceties. She was holding an alien baby dragon while 3 of his much larger relatives decided whether to thank her or eat her, and her stress response had apparently defaulted to sarcasm. "Allow me to explain our ways," Zarith continued, settling back onto her haunches in a way that made the deck plating groan ominously. "When a Drakari youngling reaches the age of first flight, they are taken to the trial waters. These waters are chosen specifically for their hostility, their danger, their capacity to test the youngling's will to survive." Maya felt her stomach drop. "You're telling me that pool of toxic death was supposed to be dangerous?" "The most dangerous we could find on this world," the emerald-scaled Drakari confirmed with what might have been pride. "Corrosive, poisonous, inhabited by creatures that would devour a youngling in moments. Perfect for the trial. The trial," Zarith continued, "is simple. The youngling is left alone to find their way out of the danger. If they succeed, they prove their worthiness to join the pack. If they fail," she made a gesture that the universal translator interpreted as either natural selection or delicious snack time. Maya stared at them in horror. "You abandon your children in death traps as a parenting technique. We prepare our young for the realities of existence," the blue-scaled Drakari corrected. "The galaxy is not kind to the weak. Better they learn this truth early than perish later when the pack cannot protect them." "That's," Maya struggled to find words that wouldn't start an interstellar incident. "That's absolutely insane. And yet," Zarith said, tilting her massive head, "you risked your own safety to save a youngling that was not even of your species. This suggests either tremendous courage or tremendous stupidity." "I'm going with stupidity," Maya said. "It's been working out great so far." Brooks made a strangled sound that might have been a laugh or a cry for help. Lieutenant Torres was recording everything with the kind of focus that suggested she was either documenting first contact or gathering evidence for Maya's court-martial. "Here is where our dilemma becomes complex," Zarith said, her voice taking on ceremonial undertones that made the air itself seem to thicken. "By interfering with the trial, you have violated our sacred laws. But by saving the youngling, you have also demonstrated the qualities we value most highly in our pack members: protection of the vulnerable, courage in the face of danger, and willingness to risk oneself for another." Maya blinked. "I'm sorry, what now?" "Furthermore," Zarith continued, "the youngling has accepted your touch, your scent, your presence. In our culture, this creates a bond that cannot be broken. You have become, in the eyes of our law, his pack mother." The silence that followed was so complete that Maya could hear the station's life support systems humming 3 decks away. "His what now?" Maya finally managed. "Pack mother," the Emerald Drakari explained helpfully. "The one responsible for his training, his protection, his integration into pack society. It is a sacred bond, not entered into lightly." Maya looked down at Nugget, who was currently trying to eat one of the buttons on her jacket. but I don't know anything about raising dragons. I can barely keep a houseplant alive. The bond has been established, Didnt said with finality. The youngling has chosen you, and you accepted that choice when you continued to care for him, instead of abandoning him to his fate. I kept him alive for like 18 hours. That's not exactly a lifetime commitment. In our culture, the blue-scaled Drakari said solemnly, 18 hours of protection is equivalent to swearing a blood oath. You are now bound to the youngling, until he reaches maturity. Maya felt her knees go weak. How long does that take? Approximately 200 of your years. Captain Brooks chose that moment to sit down heavily on a nearby equipment crate, his face the color of recycled atmosphere. 200 years, he repeated faintly. But that's not the most interesting part, Didnt said, and Maya was pretty sure she detected a note of amusement in the matriarch's voice. By accepting the role of pack mother to one of our young, you have automatically become part of our pack structure. According to our laws, you are now pack sister to every Drakari in the 19th hunting pack. Pack sister, Maya repeated slowly. What does that mean exactly? It means, Didnt said, rising to her full imposing height, that you are now under the protection of 3,000 Drakari warriors. It means that any insult to you is an insult to our entire lineage. It means that your species has gained the friendship and alliance of one of the most powerful military forces in this sector of the galaxy. Maya stared at her. Because I couldn't let a baby dragon drown. Because you demonstrated the qualities that define what it means to be Drakari, Didnt corrected. Courage, compassion, and the willingness to act when others would stand aside. These are not qualities we expected to find among the small warm bloods. Small warm bloods, Maya muttered. That's what you're calling humans. You are small, the Emerald Drakari pointed out reasonably. And warm. It seemed appropriate. Dr. Kim finally spoke up from where she'd been frantically taking notes. Matriarch Didnt, does this mean that humanity and the Drakari are now allies? Didnt's attention turned to the physicist, and Kim visibly steeled herself under that ancient gaze. The 19th pack claims friendship with your species, yes. Other packs may choose differently, but our word carries significant weight among the Drakari nations. Maya felt the universe tilt sideways. Are you telling me that I accidentally became humanity's first interstellar diplomat by saving a baby dragon from a puddle? Essentially yes, Didnt confirmed. Though I would not characterize the trial waters as merely a puddle. They were quite expertly chosen for maximum lethality. Oh well, that makes it so much better, Maya said, then looked down at Nugget, who had given up on her button, and was now trying to groom her thumb. What happens to him now? I mean, he failed his trial, right? Does he get kicked out of Dragon Society or something? Didnt said, and Maya was certain she was smiling now, despite the lack of visible lips. That is where our laws become truly interesting. You see, by saving him, you have not prevented his trial. You have simply changed the nature of it. Maya had a sudden horrible suspicion about where this was going. Changed it how? His trial is no longer to survive the waters alone, Didnt explained. His trial is now to prove himself worthy of the pack mother, who claimed him. He must live up to the courage and compassion you showed in saving him. And if he fails, then he will have disappointed the pack sister who risked everything to give him a chance at life. The blue Drakari said solemnly. Which among our people is considered a fate worse than death? Maya looked at Nugget, who chose that moment to chirp happily and nuzzle against her palm. No pressure, little guy, she said weakly. 3 hours later, Maya found herself sitting in the station's main conference room, staring at a formal alliance treaty written in flowing Drakari script that looked like someone had taught calligraphy to a particularly artistic octopus. Nugget was curled up in her lap, finally asleep after what had apparently been the most exciting day of his short life. So let me get this straight, Maya said, addressing the assembled crowd of humans, aliens, and what appeared to be a hastily assembled diplomatic corps that had materialized out of nowhere the moment word got out about first contact. Because I couldn't walk past a drowning baby, I am now officially a member of an alien warrior pack. Humanity has gained a military alliance with a species that could probably conquer half the galaxy before lunch, and I'm personally responsible for raising a dragon for the next 2 centuries. That is a remarkably accurate summary, Didnt confirmed from her position at the head of the table, where she dominated the room like a golden monument to barely contained power. Though I would point out that Drakari do not typically conquer, we prefer the term aggressively relocate. Oh, that's so much better, Maya muttered. I feel completely reassured. Captain Brooks, who had spent the last hour alternating between panic and euphoria as he realized his backwater research station had just become the most diplomatically important outpost in human space, cleared his throat nervously. Matriarch Zarith, we're honored by your offer of alliance, but I feel I should point out that Dr. Rodriguez is just one human. She can't speak for our entire species. Perhaps not, Zarith agreed. But she can speak for the qualities your species possesses. We have observed you for some time, small warm bloods. Your expansion into space, your treatment of other species, your tendency to form alliances rather than simply consume what you encounter. Dr. Rodriguez's actions merely confirmed what we had already begun to suspect. Which is? Dr. Kim asked, her recorder still running and her eyes bright with scientific curiosity. That humans possess what we call pack heart, the emerald-scaled Drakari explained. The ability to extend protection and loyalty beyond one's immediate genetic family. It is a rare quality in the galaxy. Most species we encounter are concerned only with their own survival. And yet the blue-scaled Drakari added, your Dr. Rodriguez risked contamination, violated her own safety protocols, and defied her superior's direct orders to save a creature she had never seen before and might never see again. This is not the behavior of a species focused solely on self-preservation. Maya shifted uncomfortably as every eye in the room focused on her. Look, I just did what anyone would do. It's not that big a deal. Anyone. Zarith tilted her massive head. In our travels we have encountered 47 spacefaring species. 31 of them would have left the youngling to die rather than risk exposure to unknown pathogens. 12 would have captured him for study or profit. 3 would have killed him immediately as a potential threat. And the last one? Captain Brooks asked. The last one, Zarith said, her voice carrying undertones of deep respect, would have done exactly what Dr. Rodriguez did. They are now our oldest and most trusted allies, though they live far from this sector of space. Maya felt something warm and uncomfortable settling in her chest. So what happens now? Do I get a dragon license? Is there a manual for interspecies parenting? Because I have to tell you, my experience with childcare pretty much ends at keeping houseplants alive, and I'm not even good at that. Your instincts have served well so far, Zarith observed. The youngling is healthy, content, and has clearly bonded with you. We will of course provide guidance as needed. Our pack bonds are not entered into lightly, and we do not abandon our pack sisters to struggle alone. Lieutenant Torres looked up from her communication console. Ma'am, I'm receiving word from Earth Command. They want to know if our first contact situations requires immediate military support. Tell them, Captain Brooks said slowly, that our first contact situation appears to have resolved itself in humanity's favor. Significantly in humanity's favor. How significantly? Torres asked. Brooks looked at the treaty document, then at Maya, then at Zarith. Tell them that Dr. Rodriguez appears to have accidentally negotiated the most advantageous alliance in human history by rescuing what she thought was a stray pet. Maya groaned. I'm never going to live this down, am I? Probably not, Dr. Kim said cheerfully. You're going to be in every xenobiology textbook for the next 1,000 years. The Rodriguez incident. How basic human decency established our first interstellar alliance. The Rodriguez doctrine, Torres added helpfully. See abandoned baby alien, rescue abandoned baby alien, accidentally become galactic diplomat. You're all enjoying this way too much, Maya complained, but she was scratching behind Nugget's tiny horns as she said it, and the little dragon made soft contented sounds in his sleep. Zarith rose from her position, her scales shifting to patterns that Maya was beginning to recognize as pleased satisfaction. We should return to our ships and carry word of this alliance to the other packs. There will be much discussion among the matriarchs about the small warm bloods who show such unexpected wisdom. Before you go, Maya said, standing carefully so as not to wake Nugget, I have to ask, what would have happened if I hadn't found him? If he'd actually completed this trial thing, he would have eventually found his way out of the trial waters, the Emerald Drakari explained. Probably within a day or two. The trial is meant to be challenging, not impossible. So he would have been fine. Most likely. Yes, Maya stared at them. Are you telling me that I started an interstellar diplomatic incident over a dragon who didn't actually need rescuing? You started an interstellar diplomatic alliance, Zarith corrected gently, over a youngling who was scared, alone and facing his greatest challenge without guidance or comfort. The fact that he might have survived without your intervention does not diminish the courage and compassion you showed in ensuring he did not have to. She paused, then added with what Maya was now certain was amusement. Besides, his trial was always going to end with him joining a pack. We simply did not anticipate that the pack would include a small warm-blood pack mother who argues with matriarchs and treats ancient customs as suggestions. Hey, I don't argue with Maya started, then caught herself. Okay fine, I argue with matriarchs, but only because some of your ancient customs involve child endangerment. And that, Zurit said, moving toward the docking bay entrance, is exactly why the 19th Pack is honored to call humanity allies. May the stars guide your path, Pack Sister Maya Rodriguez. As the Drakari delegation left, Maya found herself alone in the conference room with Nugget, Captain Brooks, and the slowly dawning realization that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. So Brooks said finally, "Any thoughts on how we're going to explain to Earth Command that our xenobiologist is now technically a member of an alien military organization?" Maya looked down at Nugget, who had woken up and was gazing at her with those enormous trusting eyes that had started this whole mess. "We tell them the truth," she said, "that sometimes the best diplomatic strategy is just not being a terrible person. Revolutionary concept, I know." She headed toward the door, then paused and looked back at Brooks. "Also, you might want to start requisitioning some bigger quarters. Something tells me Nugget's going to outgrow my lab pretty quickly." "How quickly?" Brooks asked nervously. Maya grinned, feeling genuinely happy for the first time since this whole adventure began. "Well, if his mom is any indication, I'd say we've got maybe 6 months before he's too big to fit through the airlock. Better start planning that expansion now." As she walked toward her quarters, Nugget chirping contentedly on her shoulder, Maya reflected on the strange turns life could take. 24 hours ago, she'd been a lonely xenobiologist on a backwater research station, cataloging alien slime and wondering if she'd made a mistake choosing science over a nice safe job in accounting. Now she was Pack Sister Maya Rodriguez, interstellar diplomat, and the adoptive mother of what would someday be a 3,000-pound space dragon, with questionable judgment, and an apparent fondness for eating expensive scientific equipment. "You know what, Nugget?" she said, scratching behind his horns. "I think I like this job after all." Nugget trilled in agreement, then promptly tried to eat her comm badge. Some things, Maya reflected, never changed. And maybe that was exactly the way it should be.